success is still this many people here.
Yes, impressive. So thanks everyone for being present and engaged. And at this time of day, where we're in between you and a nice cold beer, considering the temperature outside. So the issue we're addressing today is the contrast and potential friction that happens between global leadership and local leadership or execution of the plan. So we're going to discuss that point to begin with, following introducing Rob Williams, a very new friend of mine from CSL. We've got Julie Ellis, which we've known each other a very long time, who's here from Menarini, and interestingly has moved from her commercial career into pricing on a regional level. So she has a lot to contribute when talking about the leadership that comes from head office versus what's done locally and in what proximity to the customer they are. And Charlie and I worked together many moons ago in a no longer existing company, Alexion, was a standalone anyway. And Charlie brings a lot to the discussion, along with Julie, to have first-hand experience on both sides of that equation. So having worked locally, but then also working globally, what challenges are there for both groups? So we're just going to start off with going back to Nayana's from Hummingbird's presentation earlier this afternoon. Oh, God. And she mentioned the IKEA effect, which is something I've been looking at it for a long time, and also having the experience of working globally and locally. That's sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Okay. So the behavioural concept that comes from the IKEA effect is around the personal interaction with the task, if you like. And it's been studied in the US, and it certainly appears that the level of engagement and the quality of the output is significantly higher when you have a decent amount of decision-making made at the proximity to customers. So the question after all that, I think we need to give credit to Big Pharma for being very successful. It's almost by definition a successful endeavour. And we've seen a lot of technology and new approaches to structurally manage business across the globe, and they're getting a lot better at it. So the question to the panel, the first one is, in a world that AI can personalise campaigns at scale, etc., do we really need the significant and expensive investment into having a highly qualified local team, both as a group and as individuals? And considering that effect that we've talked about with the IKEA effect, is where do we prioritise that? And, you know, do we really need a large number of the people in this room to be executing global strategies when they've become very successful? So as Rob is currently in a global position, we thought we'd start off with him to sort of give his perspective on the engagement of the local people.
Thank you. So really it brings back a moment from about 2 or 3 weeks ago when someone came past our desk, or my desk in the office, and sort of said, you know what, Rob, I was up from 10 till 11:30 last night getting taught for 90 minutes how to paint by numbers. Do Global honestly believe we can't think for ourselves? Now, that's clearly not what we're after, right? Because we know that they can think for themselves. And we need to really do a much better job of making sure we get the balance between adoption of strategies and adaptation to really localise things. And we need to get that right, really encourage that, because without that, you're not going to get the engagement effect that Adrian was talking about earlier. You're not going to, if you don't get the engagement, you're not going to get the ownership of that plan, and you're not going to get the success. So we really need to get that balance of adoption, adaptation right.
Awesome.
So
Karaoke night.
I bring a kind of different. I've worked in global, I've worked locally, and then now I work in a regional role. And I see myself in that regional role as someone to enable performance. And I sit, yes, as a market access person up here, but my background is commercial. You know, I work with 13 different countries, with 13 different health systems, 13 different reimbursement systems, and I translate what the global team give us to then work and partner with our regional, with our country teams to enable them to be successful. They are the experts in their markets. I don't know how all 13 reimbursement systems work. I just enable them. I'm curious and I ask the right questions, but then I also protect them from the silly questions we get from global. And I think that's the reason why, you know, my role's important at the moment, because we don't always have 100% of the capabilities in every market. So they do need, some of them do need some hand-holding. I know how to do the strategy and I know how to do everything else. I just don't know how to implement it in that country. And that's my role. They're the experts. I'm never going to tell them, someone once said, I'm not telling them how to suck eggs. I'm working with them to help them be successful. And I think that's where it works really well.
Do you think there's any difference between your functional history, comparing pricing and reimbursement to commercial activities? Is there a distinction between those two when it comes to global versus local?
I don't think there is. I mean, I've worked in a global role, and I've worked, you know, we were talking about this as we were preparing for the model, for the panel, was I've worked with global brand teams where we brought countries in and we got their input and we built the strategy together. I don't think there's anything different between what I do and what the global team should be doing, whether that's at a market access perspective, whether that's at a regulatory perspective, or whether that's at a commercial perspective, or even at a finance perspective. I think it's the same across all the functions. And the closer we can be to enable performance, the better that opportunity is. And allow the experts to be the experts.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Charlie?
I just wanted to start by saying thank you, Mike, for really taking away the glow of achievement that you get when you assemble IKEA flat pack, which now I won't have anymore.
There's a better example, I think. And that is, in the 50s, they developed cake mixers for middle-class housewives. And when they first launched it, it was a miracle of engineering and processing food. And it got a great result. But they found it to be a complete flop. And through market research, they discovered that the people who are buying a cake mix feel like a bit of a fraud serving somebody else's work to your guests. Yeah?
So you're ruining packet brownies and Pax wardrobes. That's one hit.
Got it in one.
So look, I
This
think,
is not the CBD session.
I think the case for homogenised global strategy is pretty compelling, right? Like, you follow the plan, you're going to hit you're going to address the larger part of the opportunity. You're probably going to hit your numbers, or at the very least, your numbers are going to benchmark against. But I think the big but is the less localised that strategy is, the less you're going to hit on your market differences, and the less likely you're going to be able to take that asset and that team into a high performance dynamic. And, so I think, it's fine to go with those centralised strategies, but I think we really need to pay attention to how we localise them into our market to make sure that we don't just reach, 30%, we reach sort of 50, 60% of that opportunity.
Excellent. Any other points for the panel on that topic or that question?
No, good.
Okay. So while global campaigns have obviously been effective, and I think the strong correlation to the size of the organisation is a good reflection on how success comes apart in a commercial point of view. Having also faced this challenge of what should and shouldn't go into a global plan or project, is understanding how heterogeneous the markets are and how much, change that needs to go into those strategies. So inevitably, it's an exercise in compromise. Trying to please everybody all the time is a really tough ask, especially when you're sort of entering that point and have influence directly on it, where you think you should have all the answers. I think it's a good shift to see where we're going with that. Sorry. So in that case, with all that compromise, I think those communications or projects that come from global can be quite vanilla and a little bit generic without the local colouring and local inputting and the extensive experience and knowledge around how things work and how dynamic it is. So, forgive me, I've just lost my track again. So, one of the important things is customer intimacy with the company representative and sort of moving decision-making and empowerment as close to the customer as possible provides some of the agility that we're talking about, the ability to take on a question with great knowledge in order to actually provide an answer on the spot with a customer. Where it's suitable, that is. So I'm wondering, Charlie, from your experiences from that point of view, and looking at the talent pool in Australia at the moment, is there a chance here that we've sort of atrophied our strategic abilities as an industry, where the entry-level jobs quite often seem to be execution plans or project managers for the bulk of the decision-making coming from global. So, Charlie, I'm just wondering if you can reflect on that.
Yeah, sure. Like, I think in general, career paths into some of these areas, we all feel that those have definitely reduced. I'm unfortunately old enough to be part of a demographic that was lucky enough to develop end-to-end in-market, strategy, to develop creative campaigns, to do large-scale innovative programs. And I think unless you're doing that kind of work at a country level, it's really hard to see a good line of sight to doing that kind of stuff at scale for regional, global. And so, yeah, I think it's a problem that those pathways have somewhat kind of reduced or maybe even disappeared because we're depriving people of that experience. And I think, again, reflecting personally, that all important experience of sometimes getting it slightly wrong, and learning in a smaller environment from those mistakes and being able to move on from that and on with your career.
Thanks, Charlie. Julie, I'm sure you've got a different perspective from a pricing and reimbursement point of view. Would you argue that's consistent with what Charlie has just said?
I mean, I think, you start off in most different companies in different roles and you move across. And I know I remember having a conversation with a senior leader in my organisation recently where she was looking at my CV, and her response to me with so many different levels of roles was, that shows agility. So I think we tend to have a generation that are coming up through our industry where they want to be GMs tomorrow.
Don't we all?
They all want that next promotion. When's my next promotion coming? When, I've done this, now I deserve this. And we don't always have that ability to be able to say, hey, come on, take a break. I'm really lucky I've employed someone recently in my team in the region, and her whole thing is, I just wish I could spend a week in your head and learn everything that you know, and that's why I've taken this role, and that's what I'm enjoying doing. And I'm not an expert, 100% expert. Two of the people that I had on the panel this morning are much more experts in market access than I am. But I'm an expert in trying to bring people along a journey. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I think you can do that regardless of the function. I hope that answers the question, Michael.
It does, and congratulations on those kind of achievements that you've had to date. Rob, I was wondering if you can reflect on it as you're currently working in a global capacity.
Yeah.
What considerations do you make between what should be local and what should be global?
Well, I guess I'll reflect on an experience from a few years back when I was leading a marketing team and found that my 3 best marketers, senior brand managers, all moved off to New Jersey in the period of about 18 months. So it did absolutely leave a hole that was really hard to fill, unfortunately. So it does happen where global sometimes will take talent. I'm in what I think is a really fortunate position that I'm in a global role, but based in Melbourne. And interestingly, I've had less travel this year than I have had throughout my whole career somehow. So it's been really nice opportunity for me to be able to develop in roles in Australia, move into a global role, but still be based in Melbourne, but then potentially come back to an Australian role with that experience. Because interestingly, talking to someone a few years back in a local company in Melbourne, senior leader, she was saying that any BUD role that we would take on, we would expect global experience. But with the lack of the middle management roles certainly from Melbourne, I can't speak so much of Sydney, with the restructures that have gone on over time, a lot of those roles have been stripped out. So those developmental roles that go from brand manager to senior brand manager to maybe a sales manager to get some experience in managing people to a BUD or a middle level position, they're becoming less and less in Melbourne, that's for sure, and probably in Sydney as well.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I think there's still a lot of talent in the talent pool, so to speak, in Australia, but you can foresee how that might start diminishing over time, where you don't have, if you like, a step in that career that involves struggle. Trying to come up with an idea and execute it is very different from the brand plan in a box that is often put in. And I think what's also important is, as Charlie pointed to, the response time and the immediacy of answering questions and being able to create value for the customer, I think something that needs to be nurtured and considered as part of the succession planning, without any specifics, is setting up an organisation that has that fertile ground to build strong strategists and marketers, med affairs, etc. Okay, guys, we officially hit the 0 countdown. I can almost smell those beers right now. So I'd just like to give the panel one last chance to make any points that they want to get.
Well, super quick, because we are standing between us and the end of the day. Forgiveness and permission, and knowing when to lean into both.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Giving people an opportunity to learn on the job is really important, but also allowing them to have an input into anything that is done at a global perspective, because if you have that input, you're more likely to run with it and adapt it locally than if you leave it to just, here it is now, execute against it.
Yep.
Yeah, here. That's what I was going to say. Local input's vital from a global perspective.
Yep. And I think you've got to look at the situations independently sometimes as well, as far as how much support is really needed versus the local knowledge and relationships. So on that note, I'd like you to join me in thanking our panel for this afternoon.